Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran trying to convince people that a song you wrote in 1989 predicted the COVID pandemic, or else a scrappy upstart trying to write the ballad of social distancing isolation that will win the hearts of millions and heal the world, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey everybody, it's the last Friday of May 2020, and I thank you for joining us. This week's episode is brought to us by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I am old enough to remember when you had to pay somebody called a web developer to get a website made. And for those of you who are younger, I'll explain what that was. It was always some guy named Bronwyn who drove a PT Cruiser that he had specially ordered from Europe. So the driver's seat was on the wrong side, and when you asked him about it, he'd pretend like he didn't know what you were talking about. And he smoked menthol parliaments and put the butts of those parliaments in your mom's flower boxes with absolutely no respect. And old Bronwyn would charge you about $1,000 for a website that would be obsolete in 6 months. It's the future now, guys. We can have nice things. We don't have to deal with the Bronwyns of the world anymore. Bandzoogle is one of those nice things. It powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. Everything that you need is in there. Hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, social media integrations, the ability to crowdfund commission-free, to do fan subscriptions commission-free. It's a great service. I cannot recommend it enough. The Working Songwriter podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Just use the promo code TWS to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. If you'd like to hear some of my music live in the coming months, I'll be on the internet. Specifically Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel. Obviously, I lied last week and said that I'd be there, but it turned out it was Memorial Day, so I postponed the show. So this week I will be there, barring an act of God, and I'll be there 9 p.m. playing some covers over on my YouTube channel at 9 p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you there. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, there's a few things that you could do to help. First, you could become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support a creative endeavor that you love and find meaningful. So if you head over to their site, Patreon, you search for The Working Songwriter, or you search for my name, you can sign up to kick in a voluntary subscription. A couple bucks a month, the price of a cup of coffee. If just 1% of our listenership did that, I would be in great shape during this age of COVID. When we cannot tour. So thanks to all of you who have done that already. And if you're not in a place where you can contribute financially, I totally get it. A lot of people are in dire straits right now with the COVID thing happening. So you can help out for free by either leaving us a rating in the iTunes store or simply by telling a friend about the show. And the simple math on those two last things is that they will help me much more than they will be a pain in the ass for you. I'll end all the harassment there. Thanks for being here this week, and I hope you enjoy this chat. Our guest this month got his start in music as an instrumentalist. Daniel Donato was the wizened age of 14 when he began playing his Telecaster in bars on Nashville's Lower Broadway. The Strip is the tourist crawl where Music City's best session musicians play in cover bands 12 hours a day. He got a true musical education there, and it wouldn't be long before he was recognized on the other side of the alley at the Mother Church of Country Music, the Ryman Auditorium. In 2018, Donato was nominated by the Americana Music Association as Instrumentalist of the Year for his work as a sideman for Paul Cawthon, the Wild Feathers, and the Don Kelly Band. After years of work in other people's bands, Daniel decided to hang his own shingle with his own band and his own songs. It's a sound that he's dubbed Cosmic Country. Donato has taken the classic country and psychedelic sounds into a more modern paradigm with his ability to broadcast himself with the technology of today. He's built a fan base through Instagram, YouTube, and a podcast of his own. He once told an interviewer, "If I want to be a guitar player in 2019, I need to have a sound you can recognize in less than a second." That new school approach brought him to the attention of the decidedly old school agency William Morris Endeavor, which signed him at the age of 23. Guitar Player magazine has said that he possesses mammoth chops, social media finesse, and a never-give-up attitude, also calling him one of the hottest young pickers in Nashville. That's high praise. When I was in Nashville recording an album last year, after a session, I went over to the club Third and Lindsley, and I caught one of his sets. I was duly impressed and have been following the trail that he's been blazing ever since. I was very glad that we got to catch up on the phone last month. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, it's Joe. How you doing?
Fantastic. What's going on, Joe?
I'm in my basement with a recording rig because we're locked down here in Maryland, and I'm basically doing the equivalent of Wayne's World while my kids are upstairs.
You know, there's worse movies to have an equivalent of doing.
Yeah, definitely. And we might be on our way to one of those movies, but we're not there yet.
Whoa. Oh, my God.
How are you doing, man?
Well, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say. But it's like, I'm also on speaker. I just have this terrible ear infection that's going on. I hope it doesn't hurt the audio quality at all.
No, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, cool. I'm doing all right, man. Luckily, like these days, I have a pretty positive serotonin drip, so I'm not doing too bad on like being overwhelmed with news or anything like that. And fortunately, my family's all good, and I just moved back in with my parents to a mother-in-law suite behind their house back in August. So like, it just seems like perfect timing, like financially for everything that's going on. But it's a pretty unsettling time. It seems like each day this chasm has a potential to grow a little bit deeper. And it seems like it keeps on kind of doing a square root unto itself and just growing.
Definitely. Did you move back in with your folks because you were starting to tour a bit more and you just didn't feel like shelling out a bunch of cash for a place you were never going to be at?
Yeah, man. I had a girlfriend that we were madly in love. We lived together for 4 years and ended up just not working out. And about a month after that happened, my landlord somehow, he wasn't involved with the breakup at all by any means, but was going to double my rent, and my rent was going to be $3,000 a month. And I just didn't have the I'd be losing money every month if I were to keep on touring doing that. So I fulfilled the contract for another year, and then I moved out, and it was all right. It's actually turning out to be like a really nice life move. Yeah,
dude. I wish in my mid-20s to early 20s I hadn't kept a place because I feel like I wasted a lot of money on that. Once you hit your 30s and mid-30s, you definitely want a place. But in my 20s, I was just gone all the time. I was gone all the time and just tossing money at apartments, not even places that I owned, where at least I could say I was paying the mortgage, you know?
Exactly, man. And how old are you now?
I'm 35.
So this was 15 years ago. So, like, what a marvelous place, like, in time that was. Like I bet things were way less cheap, or I bet things were way cheaper.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. I was living in Chicago. When I first moved to Chicago, when I was your age, I was like 21 when I moved to Chicago. Dude, I looked in the Chicago Reader for a room that I could rent, and I rented a room in Chicago in the hippest neighborhood, Logan Square, for $300 $300 a month. $300.
That's absolutely insane.
Isn't that crazy?
That's absolutely insane.
And so I could
Oh my
work a
God.
job where I was basically working during the day doing construction, and I'd make like, let's say, $500 or $600 a week, and that was like
Nice.
plenty enough to pay my rent, groceries. I was like doing all right with that amount of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I bet so. I bet so. It's a different time now, like in every way imaginable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, money was. I can't imagine, especially being your age, because not only is it hard enough to get a start, but once you do get a start, anytime you do have money coming into your business, and I'm sure you do have money coming into your business now, all you want to do right now is put it right back into the business to make it grow. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And it's a big bummer to think of that money coming in, and then all you do is you just set it on fire with rent. You know what I mean? Rather than advertising yourself more, all that, you know?
Right. That's the whole thing with ego, though, where it's like, you know, people want to pay that premium to say they live in that certain part of town. And they can write it off by saying that it's a great way to network. It's a great way to be involved in things. But it's like, there are much wiser ways to invest in yourself, both in the short term and the long term. Especially if you're not making oodles of money. Like if you're paying rent and if you're not making that on a weekly basis of what the entirety of your monthly nut should be, then you are losing money. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. And it's like, that's not the way to operate in any business, it seems.
No.
So, man, it was a good force thing to kind of come upon me. And since then, my financial situation, the morality that I operate on, it has completely changed. And the meaning of the money that I make has completely changed in a really fast period of time.
Well, explain that to me. What do you mean the morality of your money has changed?
So I was living in East Nashville, and I was living right behind like a really popular street. I had like people over at my house all the time, and I'd be spending money on nice things around the house, or I'd be spending money on doing party favors, and that sometimes that would be like a couple grand a month.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, it's crazy. And now that I'm out here, I'm in Brentwood now.
Yeah.
I'm having no parties at the house, which is saving me money. And then I'm also able to take any money that I make, and I'm able to just put it instantly right back into touring.
Yes.
Whether that's in a very literal way, like buying a trailer in cash that we just did, or like upgrading the van, which we just did, or if it's like in a way that's more long term, like investing in like a digital marketing team, like we were doing for this store that was supposed to go all the way through May.
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. I think, well, the number one thing I spent money on in my 20s was getting myself drunk, but the second highest line item was getting other people drunk. So
you got a network, right? Like that's the real thing.
You do, but you're right. There's smarter ways to do it, and when you have the opportunity to say like, oh, but look where all this money could be going otherwise, whether it's nuts and bolts things like you're talking about to actually get you on the road, or whether it's promotion to help get people out to the shows. I mean, it feels a lot better. I don't want to dwell too much on the virus here because as I put out these episodes, I want to mainly talk about music, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the ramifications for your tour, because I know that. Explain the tour that you were on and explain the upshot of it after everything's been quarantined.
Yeah, really great, really great. So it's like we were on a 32-show tour. I'm with William Morris, so it was like we had great routing and we had great markets we were hitting on good nights of the week. We weren't out supporting any release of any sort. So it was purely just me exercising the variation of the artist that I am, which is mainly a live performer, which is what people know me for. So it's my main stream of income. And so I think we were 9 shows in, and it was on the onset of the tour on February 13th when we started really hearing about the severity of coronavirus. And it wasn't until 5 weeks in that. It wasn't until about 3 weeks in when we started getting scared, talking, hearing people about potentially canceling things, moving things, meetings getting canceled, etc. 4 weeks in, okay, things are getting real now on that side of the world. And look in that industry is absolutely shutting down. And then this last week, we ended up canceling all the shows, postponing all the shows, actually is the correct term. And until the last business quarter of the year, by the way, which is insane. And it's affecting every industry from all walks of life. I have friends who went to college in New York and they're working on like Wall Street, or I have friends who are working the pipeline in North Carolina. You know, I have friends who are working at Old Navy in California who are trying to be actors. So like variations of all industry, all potential thresholds of income at the age of 24, 25, 26, and they're all kind of suck for the time being. Yeah. Only in regard to their career. I don't know anyone who's gotten the virus, who has gotten sick from it, fortunately. And so if you don't have that going on, you actually have like a real opportunity to like literally probably the only opportunity in our lives that I've ever experienced where it's like, hey, you literally can work on yourself as a person and work on your daily habits and your morality and not like be forced to go to work and have your monthly nut.
Yeah. Yeah. That would definitely be the most positive way of looking at it. And so that's all I want to talk about. I want to talk about music now. And so one of the things that you just mentioned, what I thought was really interesting is you said we're out on the road and we weren't supporting a release. And so for people who aren't familiar with the music business, that's a very strange thing to be able to do. So many tours and so many cycles are built around the press and the just sort of the general attention you get when you do a release. It's very uncommon for someone to be able to tour off cycle. You're able to do it, I would assume, because you've been so brilliant, so canny about using new media to get across. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the new media that you've used? I'd say that's definitely YouTube for you, definitely your Instagram account. Can you kind of speak to how you've built your business using those new tools at your disposal?
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. I mean, I think now it's like we kind of have the opportunity to kind of act in a way as if you're a media station, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of have this opportunity now where we can put out content all the time. We have a literal stage because the stage is literally just a platform for attention. And the currency of attention now means a whole new thing. And there's different ways to acquire it than we've never had before. And so I just kind of found, and I'm still finding too, which is something that's always a weird thing in the conversation. Where I always get this weird feeling where people are like, well, you figured something out. Where it's like, I feel the exact opposite. Where it's like, I feel like 9 pieces of content that I put out will get, 30% of my viewership that follows me. And then 1 piece of content I'll do pretty well. So like, I still feel like I'm figuring a lot of things out. And, but yeah, man, it's just like this behavior of how can I, in a very fast and efficient way, say who I am and provide value through what I do, and then get it out to as many people as possible while it's still free to do so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and while it's still free to do so is the critical thing, because right now it is. And that's great. I think it's more than that, though. I mean, you're speaking of it purely, it sounds like you're speaking of it in a utilitarian way of like, how can I get across who I am as fast as possible to as many people? But from watching you, from the outside looking in, from me watching what you're doing, it seems like it's not just that. It seems like you actually, it seems like you're enjoying it. You know what I mean? It seems like you're enjoying this new medium that's in front of you. You're not grudgingly saying, okay, well, I got to get my music out, so I guess I'll do it through Instagram. It just seems like you're really, it seems like you're a kid in a candy shop in a way.
Well, man, that's so fantastic. I love how that, I'm glad to hear that, where it's like, just like any person, of course, like there's some days you show up to do your work and your intention is there, but the result is not there. And there are variables that are outside of your realm of understanding, and there's a lot of friction and confusion and sometimes lack of self-empathy to be found in those days. But it's just like working out loud, thinking out loud, no Ed Sheeran pun intended. And it's like just doing that real time on social. And it's like the people who are really going to dig what you do, as you know very well, they're going to dig you what you do as long as you just put it out. There's this really great book that I feel like a lot of people should read because it's also under 100 pages. So if you're not even a reader, it's just an easy thing to digest. And it's this book called We Are All Weird by Seth Godin. Are you familiar with that book?
I'm not, but I know who. I've read a book by Seth Godin that I'll mention to you in a second. But continue, please. I'm interested in this one.
Please, yeah, I'd love to hear about it because, like, I'm definitely on the train of him. But it's this idea basically now where it's like we are now more similar than we've ever been, and we're now more different than we've ever been in regards to talking about culture and community as a whole. So we're more similar in ways than we've ever been because we're all on Facebook, we all buy shit off Amazon, and we all kind of like Netflix. We like the giant macro aspects of life, like we draw from the same fountain. But I'm wearing Japanese selvage denim jeans right now that are 13.5 ounces thick. And it's like, no one gives a crap about that lives on my entire street.
Right.
So you have this ability to like have really, really niche tastes because all of the information in the world is out there. And when all the information is out there, all of the products surrounding it, all the interests, and all the community around it is out there. And so we have the ability to be really niche now. And so his whole idea is if you're trying to be a brand as a person, or if you're trying to operate and start a brand, or if you're simply just trying to spread word of any sort or a service, you need to find what your niche is as soon as possible and target directly to them. And fortunately for you, the way to do that is to be yourself in the most refined and fulfilled way possible.
Right on. So what have you found that to be for you? Like, I know that you're still figuring it out. It's a work in progress, obviously, 100%. but to the degree that you have an idea of what it might be, what have you noticed that needs to be?
How so?
Who do you find is responding to what you're doing?
Oh yeah, man. A lot of jam band fans, a lot of country music fans, and then of course guitar players.
Yes.
And so there's getting into the genre of people. It's like also now like lifestyle is not 100% tied to genre preference, which it used to be. Like back in the day, like that's one of the biggest observational changes that we can see in when people saying let's dismiss genre as a whole. Well, that's because lifestyle very like aside from country music, like you can like whatever. But like my parents, like right when hip hop was coming out, it was still like not in their community and their culture because it wasn't infiltrated into their lifestyle. Well, now it's like on the biggest scale possible, like EDM, pop, hip hop, like that's what most people across the world listen to. But like most people across the world aren't like those people. But it's like my dad came from Jersey and he fucking loves Bruce Springsteen, and like so do I. But it's like because Bruce sang to him. So it was like within his lifestyle. So the people that like what I do are still like they're Americana fans or country music fans, jam band fans, and then guitar players. So it's like a very niche market of people. I hope that answer helps.
It did. Before we go off on another track here, I wanted to mention to you the Seth Godin book that I read it was also about 100 pages long. It was called The Dip, and I reached a place in 2015. I basically just turned 30. I was about to start a family. I'd been doing music on the road for about 10 years. And I kind of had to decide, like, okay, well, is this practicable for me to continue doing? You know, my business had kind of stalled. It was kind of in the same place. And I read this book by him, and he allowed you to analyze, is what you're doing right now something where you should cut and run from it? Or is this, you're following a trajectory that a lot of businesses and things do where it starts really good at the start and then you level off for quite a long while, or you even maybe take a little bit of a dip. And then after that, you figure out a few key things and then it takes off like crazy. And I'm not going to say that things have taken off like crazy for me since then, but I've definitely, after reading that book, I said, okay, well, it's not time for me to cut and run. I've definitely built something here. I definitely have an ability to stay in this space, and I love being here, so if I can do it, I'm going to. And he was right. I mean, it really allowed me to turn things around in a meaningful way, and it also allowed me to stay in a business and a community that I love, you know. My
God. What an amount of ego you had to encounter to honestly answer those questions, I'm assuming.
Yeah, man. I mean, this looks so different than I thought it was going to look like when I was full of piss and vinegar at age 18, and I thought that I was the second coming of Christ, you know. And
right.
And it was, I guess it was to some degree painful shedding a lot of that. But guess what? It's also painful to live inside of that. You know what I mean? So.
Of course it is, man, right? And isn't that the ability that we have is we're able to analyze parts of ourselves see if they work, and then we're able to get rid of them if they don't, if you have enough space in between what you're doing and how you're reacting. And it's like on a daily basis. I'm 100% being totally transparent. It's like my father and I got in this huge argument the other night in conversation about, just recently since the tour has started, I've been really stressed because right on the onset of the tour, we've been hearing about coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping I was going to like have a release out, not to digress too much. Sorry.
No, you're good. This is what podcast's for, man.
Right, real. We didn't have this release coming out the way we thought it was going to be. And so we ended up just going out on the tour on a whim. And we ended up selling out more shows than we planned on selling out. And in the markets that we never hit before, we had a better response than we thought. But I was kind of coming home and I was being a dick most of the time. And I wasn't really aware of it. And we had this long conversation the other day where it's like, there's even behaviors that you're making to people around you that you don't even know you're making. And it's like, that's an absolute real thing. You're talking about being full of piss and vinegar. It's like, ambition is real. And it's like, I'm a very ambitious person, as are you, through your endeavors and through what your work has revealed and the people that love it, myself included. And it's like when you're an ambitious person, it's like maybe there's behaviors that you're doing that I guess books like those Seth Godin books allow you to kind of take that perspective back and see, kind of get the full view of what are the behaviors that I'm making that I might not even know that I'm doing on a daily basis. Was that the case for you at all?
Yeah, yes. I think in that regard, with what you're talking about, the most helpful thing for me in all that, in all honesty, has been my marriage. And my wife and I have been together for a really long time. I mean, we first dated in high school, and we've been back together for over a decade now, been married for about 5 years, and we're really close. And, she's kind of my bullshit detector. I'm her bullshit detector, and we trust each other enough. We've gotten really good at fighting. It's not even fights. It's just like we've gotten really good at coming to a consensus really quickly on something that we're conflicted on. And not that we always get it right, but it's really helped me change. It's really helped me stay sane. And I think it's helped her stay sane too. When you have someone in your life that's that close to you, who can call you out when you need to be called out. You need to be called out on basically a daily basis, man, to a certain degree.
My God. You do, right? Because being called out and being in a relationship with somebody externally that's not you requires negotiation. Yes. And then you can realize there's parts of yourself that you have to negotiate with on a daily basis too.
Yes.
Right? So that's great. The art of negotiation.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, for me, that's, it's a lot of things. Do I exercise today? Have I been drinking too much booze this week? Have I, am I eating garbage? There are all these pitfalls that you're constantly arguing with yourself over. So obviously, if you're in an intimate relationship with somebody, it's going to be all the more.
Well, my father and I, he's like my actual partner in the sense that every piece of content that I make that isn't a live photo, he makes alongside me. So he does all the video, and we do all the green screen work and endeavors together, and the podcast editing and everything. It's like everything is my dad and I. So he's 100% my partner, and I talk to him on a daily basis.
That's really cool.
It is cool, but aside from when I turned into an asshole for a month straight, and I didn't even really know it.
Yeah. But that's what family's for, though. That's a good thing. I travel since my father retired about 5 years ago. I travel with him. Him and I, he sells merchandise for me. Him and I split a hotel room every night when I'm on the road. And the working with family thing, man, yes, you can get to loggerheads with one another and this, that, and the other. I get that. But it's a beautiful thing if you can make it work, working with family. It's wonderful.
It really is. I'm glad to hear. I didn't know that was part of your touring capacity. That's fantastic.
It is, man. And that's also made me pretty sane as well. All my 20s, I did everything on my own, always tour managed myself, did all that. And, I think maybe I bit off more than I could chew. Probably the people that worked with me and for me got pretty frustrated with me. But it's like, man, if you're driving the van, if you are getting to and doing all the interviews, if you're setting up and breaking down the stage, if you're setting down and breaking down the merch, settling the show, you're going to be a dick sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's up until this year, that was the exact state I was in. And then within the last year, I've able to assemble a crew of guys who, through the strengths that we naturally have in our personalities and the weaknesses thereof, it's a really functioning unit. And it's like there's no slack, and it manifests in ways that are really streamlined of efficiency in regards to with travel, settling of logistics, the stage production, all of these things. It's like, well, different guys who have come into my life, different players, that's where their natural strengths are. So it's like now that's the purpose of a team. Like, I guess, going back to the marriage idea, which is just the most intimate of relationships, but a relationship nonetheless, where your natural strengths are, those are allowed to shine, because the weaknesses, you don't have to compensate for those, because the counter partner, what they bring to the table, allows you to just do what you do best.
Yes.
What a fantastic place to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's definitely when a team is running in a healthy way. And I've definitely assembled teams and run teams in a way where they don't run in a healthy way. And I'd say 99% of the blame, if not 100% of the blame, lies at my feet. It all goes to who's the person organizing it, who's the person in charge, how do they act, to what level of respect do they treat other people in their crew. And it's really hard to put together a functioning crew that can function like that over time. Have you ever been around other people's tours that you look at like their crew and their situation that they've set up, and you're like, wow, that's a model. That's what I'd like 10 years from now if I can build this really well.
Yeah, I did right after I got let go from my first gig ever, I played in a band. I played in Pam Tillis's band, actually. And Pam Tillis is an old, she's actually not old in any way. I want to take away that adjective. But some people would call her old country. I wouldn't. I would call it 90s country. But It's like, she's daughter of Mel Tillis. She's a Grand Ole Opry member. She performs there. Whenever the Opry's in session, she's doing shows there on a monthly basis. And I played in her band for a while. And they had a really great streamlined ways of communicating, the way the set needed to be learned, how to dress on stage, and I want to say, like, the logistics of their operation and the morality of their operation and the goals that they had that they wanted to execute were really well laid out, easily understood, and we were well compensated for it as well, and we were treated with respect. So it was all great. And I would never want to run an operation where I tell people, like, what to wear on stage, or really specifically, like, what parts to play, or like to walk up to the front of the stage to play a guitar solo. That's not really my thing. Right. But that doesn't matter. She did a great job at that. But I do have to say, out of every operation I've ever been a part of, that was the only one, aside from the one I'm in now, which I feel like operates pretty well, that was the only one that I really felt fulfilled doing, because every other management team, not to be pessimistic, legitimately was an actual mess, and has since then all corrupted, and none of them are functioning to this day.
Yeah. I believe there's a lot of ways to do things wrong, and there's pretty much one or two ways to do things right, so there's a lot of ways to get things wrong.
Right.
It doesn't surprise me when I see a dysfunctional organization or dysfunctional touring party. It surprises me when I see one that operates from a baseline of respect and decency across the board. I got a chance. I did a little bit of touring with the lead singer from that band, The Killers, Brandon Flowers, and I didn't tour. I toured with his solo project, but then when he came to town with the Killers, it was a much bigger operation, and I got to see that. And from the top down, from him and his tour manager and his bandmates to everyone else, I mean, dude, this was like a 10-bus tour. Like, they were moving a small city of people from town to town in arenas, and everyone that you met in the whole crew, same baseline of respect. Everything was really well communicated. There was such an esprit de corps about it. I just couldn't believe it, because an operation that big, even if you had the smallest imperfections in it, it would get so pathological so quickly. Man. So I walked away from that just thinking, man, if I could build something a quarter that good,
I'll be in good shape, going forward.
Oh, absolutely, man. A quarter of that would be a fantastic amount of success. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not just, I don't mean like a quarter of the audience. I don't think I'll ever get a quarter of the audience that big. But I just mean a quarter of the success of how well everyone worked together. What a team they were, man. It was amazing to see.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Yeah, man. I mean, what is success without a team that can keep it going and keep it running? Aside from that, like if you don't have that, you just had a good scratch-off ticket.
You could not have described it better. That's what it is. Everyone can get some rocket fuel to the top really quick and sell out some rooms really quickly, but you don't get to do that time and time and time again over the course of years and decades through the same luck as a scratch-off ticket. That doesn't happen by accident ever.
Right, totally, right on. I can't agree more.
Daniel got his start playing in bars and clubs in Nashville's Lower Broadway district, and you'll hear him describe that experience in just a moment, but I wanted to first share some history about that legendary strip that has hosted so much country music over the years. If you've ever been to Nashville, you've probably seen it for yourself, a strip of venues that hosts live country music from 10 in the morning till 3 a.m. the following morning every day. The bars and venues on the so-called honky-tonk highway have provided a jumping-off point for several generations of songwriters, artists, and session musicians. Johnny Cash and Chris Christopherson served their time there, and more recently, so did Dierks Bentley, Blake Shelton, and Gretchen Wilson. Tootsie's, Robert's Western World, The Stage, and a host of newer venues make up the scene. It got its start in the 1930s when Jimmie Rodgers began playing regularly down by where the street meets the Cumberland River by the docks. He found eager audiences there, and his success inspired other artists to play the strip. Now, it didn't hurt that the Grand Ole Opry was being broadcast from the Ryman, the mother church of country music, which shares an adjoining alley with the venues of Lower Broadway. Famed country singer Ernest Tubb opened a record shop on the strip in 1951 that still operates to this day. After 31 years, the Opry left the Ryman in 1974, and the honky-tonk highway suffered for it at the time. The area became blighted with pawn shops, peep shows, and pool halls. They were practically giving away the property at the time. Tootsie's was bought in the early 90s for around $10,000. Now, it turns out that was a pretty decent investment because the strip has since come roaring back in the last 20 years. Tootsie's now, they recently told the Tennessean that on a busy Saturday night, they will sell 11,000 beers. That's 1,000 more beers on a Saturday night than dollars paid for it 30 years ago. The strip is now home to many corporate-backed restaurants and venues that bear celebrity branding. Dierks Bentley's Whiskey Row, Alan Jackson's Good Time Bar. My guess is that it'll end up looking a lot more like Las Vegas than New Orleans in the next 20 years. But you can still go there now to hear some great country music players and singers to this day. And if you're one of those players or singers, as you're about to hear from Daniel, it might not be a bad place to go punch your first ticket in the music business.
So tell me a little bit about how you came up playing music. It sounds like you and your dad kind of work pretty closely now. Did he expose you to music at first, or was that something that you found on your own and then he came along later in your journey?
It's always been my dad. Even thinking about, it's always been my dad. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely wild. But it's the truth. Even when I was younger, I hated guitar. Did not want to touch a guitar. Hated the sight of a guitar. Used to pop my balloons on the guitar strings of an old shitty acoustic guitar that my dad had. Mm-hmm. I used to pop balloons on them. Like I hated guitar. I just hated the way it felt. He would try to get me to play it. Absolutely not my thing. Until I turned 12 and I realized I was not going to be the best skateboarder in the world. And the Guitar Hero came out, and I just kind of liked the music. And I never really listened to rock and roll music before. And then I got into a hard drive that he had, and it had all these records on there. And all the thumbnails were coming up as soon as I plugged the hard drive into a computer one day. Just remiss being a 12-year-old. And Guns N' Roses' Paradise City came on. And when that song came on, the first thing I said was, I got to learn how to do this. And I don't know what that was. That one thought that said, what makes you think you can do this? That you say you want to try, whatever that is. That's probably aside from the desire to play music itself. That's probably just part of my personality. But I wanted to start playing, and then I did that for about 2 years. Instantly loved it. Instantly, I knew I loved it because I loved being bad at it, and I loved the process of getting good. And I was able very easily to come up with next steps on how to get better. And the next steps didn't seem insurmountable. So that's like when I know today, if I don't like something, it seems like an insurmountable feat from the very go. And so I really instantly able to judge. It's like, well, if I'm not going to love the process of getting better at it, then is it really worth pursuing? But yeah, I pursued guitar heavily for 2 years, practiced it all the time in my room. And then one day, the day I finished 8th grade, the next day my dad was like, let's go down to Lower Broadway in Nashville, Tennessee, and let's see if you can set up your guitar that you just saved up all this cash for, and try to make that money back. Mm-hmm. He's like, because the guitar can make you money if you try. I was like, I never even thought for a second that would be a possible thing. But we went down that next day, and I took out this Taylor guitar, and I put out in the soft shell case, and I tried getting some money, and I made $0. And so that very day, though, as we were walking home, we passed a bar called Legends Corner, and it's still there today. And there was a band, Jason Link was playing, and he was about to take a break and pass the tip jar, which is just like a tradition that we're all familiar with. Willie Nelson actually started it. Mm-hmm. And it's like the bass player, Randy Hall, called me in from the sidewalk. We were just walking by, and he goes, "Hey, you." And he goes, "I bet you play guitar." And of course, I play guitar with me. And he goes, because you have the long hair and you're wearing a Who t-shirt. And he goes, "Why don't you go out and play?" And I had no fear. I just said, "Sure, I'd love to."
Yeah.
And it was the first time I ever held a Telecaster. And then they put the Telecaster in my hand, and then we played a Bob Seger song. And I got off stage. We played 2 songs while they passed the tip jar. And it was not a big deal. It was just like to everyone in the bar, it was just a kid getting up, and people liked seeing it. But for me, it was a maxim. It was an absolute focal point of excitement in my life, and a realization of, it was the first time I really had a vision where it was like, oh my God, like the feeling of a sound coming out from behind an amplifier, hitting me, and it reacting, and it being in touch with the room full of people. It was the first time I had a vision, and I kind of had this, I had a realized potential that I could fulfill in my life. And it was a fantastic feeling. And so the next day, we went down there, and I took the same guitar case that I had, and I put a sign on it that said, "Saving up for a Telecaster." Yeah. And that day, we made enough money to go buy a Telecaster. It was a crazy turn of events, made $555. And met a guy in a Piggly Wiggly parking lot, and a couple weeks later, bought a Telecaster, and went and sat in with that same band every weekend for 3 years in a row, every Saturday. Played on the street every Saturday for 3 years in a row. All the while, we discovered on that second day that I was playing downtown, we discovered a band playing at a place called Robert's Western World. And the band was the Don Kelly Band, which is like one of Nashville's longest running bands. They've been in town since '84, playing on a weekly basis, and they've never taken 1 week off until this past week when Broadway's been closed. And that's a dead serious fact. And Vince Gill's been in that band. Brad Paisley's played in the band. It's like Brett Nason playing that band. He's one of the most recorded guitar players in history. And I saw this band, and I realized that is what I want to do by the time I finish high school. So this is a couple days after summer vacation starts, before high school starts. And that was my goal. And went and saw them every week. I gave the singer my card every week. And I told him, if you ever need somebody, to call me. And the week that I started driving, he called me. And it was just the perfect timing. And I started playing in that band, and I ended up doing 464 shows with that band. We played for 5 hours a night, 5 days a week. And that was the place I was able to kind of realize my voice on the guitar and start that journey and start fulfilling that. And that's where the whole concept of Cosmic Country was born. And that's where my love for country music was able to be developed. And I also learned how to perform and entertain to a room in that room as well. And yeah, man.
Well, and I know that you'll say, when I ask you this question, you'll say, well, I have a long way to go, but take this within the spirit with which the question is asked. How long, in that whole process, how long did it take you to get good? Where you could just show up at a place and you'd plug in, and when you plugged in, people were just like, yeah, that's a thing. How long did that take?
Well, the thing is like, good to who is my answer. So it's like, I was always good to people because I was a kid. But then the actual players who deemed me as good, it was about a year into the process. And these were players, man. These are players who, for one reason or another, had great touring careers in the 80s and 90s and were recording great. And then some of them were actually really big profile players that were still playing down on Broadway, that just weren't touring on some seasons. And these are people who were in Keith Urban's band and played on Alan Jackson records. And one of my main mentors, James Mitchell, as a guitar player, plays in Alison Krauss's band, and he's played on like 30 #1 songs, something crazy. And so it was like, until people like that were starting to say I was good, was about a year. And but man, I still am, like, I was at it all hours of the day. You know, waking up before school 3 hours, and then practicing at lunch, and never going to any parties, just always like investing my time like I can invest money. And I remember thinking about it very early on that way, where it was like, and that was the magical thing about guitar. It was like, I was able to literally look at time as money, and I would invest it, and I would see a return on it. And nothing in my life has been that simple since, as the relationship I have with the guitar. Yeah.
So tell me why. It seems like a pretty simple path for you here would have been, okay, well, I'm just going to just jump into the studio for other people. You probably could have made scale or double scale immediately. You probably could have jumped on some pretty big tours and just played for good money weekly. Why and how did you decide to go the much more precarious but ultimately more fulfilling route of starting your own thing? I mean, that's a much more dangerous path to take.
I think it is. I mean, if you're pursuing a career in music, it's dangerous regardless. But it's like, there's more reward to be found in the market but being your boss than somebody else being your boss.
Yeah.
And I learned that really early on. So like, the market would be, in my case, my fans, and then the people that I put out whatever I do, music, books, which I put a book out when I was 18. Put out records, and I do shows, and I do content, music, all these things. My podcast, whatever I do that has my name on it, merchandise, those people are my boss. And it's just the idea of, I'd rather match my job to my personality than me try to mend myself to fit a job. Because I feel like I'm just going to have more success if I do that in the long run. Anything's a bet. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the deal for me. And, you know, let it be known, I was talking to a lot of players who had these gigs for 20 years, man. Like, my friend Johnny played for Merle Haggard for 20 years. My friend Willie Cantu played for Buck Owens until Buck Owens died. Like, he was Buck Owens' drummer for like 40 years. And I heard a lot of stories on just it not panning out in the way that I would have been happy. And if I'm going to play music, I want to win big. And it seemed like the way to win big is to have the market be your boss, and you put your name on it, and it's your risk, your reward kind of a thing.
So when you first kind of came into my view, it was because I was in Nashville making a record with Kenneth Pattingale from the Milk Carton Kids, and he's one of your biggest champions. And he took me to one of your shows. I loved it. I've been following ever since. And what I've been noticing is all that time, it seems like you spent, you said from about age 12 to, let's say 18 or 19, whenever you were in those bands, all of your time had been focused on getting good at guitar. Your focus was guitar. And it seems like, talking to Kenneth a few years ago, your focus was starting to shift more to learning songwriting. So can you talk to me about how you've approached that process of learning a totally different skill?
I approached it the same way that I learned, same way I learned how to perform. The way I approached songwriting was the same way I approached how to learn how to perform, which was just to get up and do it. So I got let go from Roberts, actually. And then I ended up touring with a bunch of bands that were signed to major labels, bands that weren't signed to major labels, i.e. we were on buses, i.e. we were in 4350s, doing the whole gambit of things, getting paid $35 a day total for a show.
Yeah.
And per diem, you know what I mean? Like brushing your teeth at the bar kind of a thing. Just gross. But I love that. I also loved the grind of that because I was 18, but,
right.
Or not at the time. No, I was 20 when I got let go, actually. And, I just realized it's like, man, I could do this better than anyone I'm playing for. Like I just had that, which is, you could call it egotistical, you could call it arrogant, but it's like, you got to be yourself, and you got to give yourself the credit to realize how much potential you within yourself can actually fulfill. And there might be some arrogance that goes in it along the way. But Kenneth was really great because he's a very honest, intelligent person. He was one of the first people actually ever that I shared my music with. And I just asked him one day if we'd be able to get together and I could play his songs, because he was such a hero of mine, because he wrote songs that hit me just as hard as his guitar playing hit me. And very few guitar players have the ability to do that.
Very few.
That was my main goal from the start, was to kind of, how can I make my songwriting and every other part that is Daniel Donato be as strong as the guitar playing. I had the realization that Daniel Donato, take it away from the person who's saying the name, there's a lot of potential to be fulfilled there that's not just a guitar player. And I had a lot of interests that were arising and growing as a person, and having relationships and seeing new parts of the world, having these new experiences where I had something to say that was more than just my guitar. So I just got up and I did it. Like I went and I did open mics. I went and I did writers rounds, and I went and I booked myself tours, and I got my mom's Nissan Rogue, and I didn't have enough money to have a bass player. So we did keyboard and bass on the same guy. We did drummer, and he brought like a 3-piece kit, and we went and toured. And, I just really hustled, and I tried to figure out what works. I always loved comedians, so I always loved the idea of like testing out the only way to tell if something's good is to test it out live. That's the only way I've ever played, was playing live. Mm-hmm. And so I just went and I started testing out my material, just like I tested out my guitar material, except I was doing it outside of Nashville, which is kind of the piece of advice I think anyone should take. Like, get out of Nashville. If you're living in a major market, like, don't try to like start in that major market. Like, of course it's good to have a fan base there and do that, but it's like, you got to get out of that world, and just go find yourself out there, or at least start the process to do so. That was a pretty vague answer, or I was pretty scattered.
That was a very specific answer. No, I know. I appreciated it. That's cool, man. Well, it sounds like we're all shut down till the end of the year, so we'll see where things go. But I got to tell you, man, just here talking to you, you can't see this because we're recording this remotely, but I've been smiling the whole time, man. You really remind me of a chapter in my life that was a difficult chapter, but looking back on it, is a chapter that I really remember really fondly, man. And I'm just, I'm rooting for you. And I think, I think, man, I just can't wait to see what happens next for you, man. I think it's going to be great.
Man, thank you so much. That means the world. And thank you, Joe.
Okay, brother. Thanks for the time. I'll talk to you.
That's our show for this week. It was brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Daniel's latest release is entitled The Starlight EP, available everywhere music is sold or streamed. If before we meet again, you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.